Welcome to the B.rad podcast. It's Brad Kearns. These are our sponsors. Male Optimization Formula with Organs. B.rad's Macadamia Masterpiece. Perfect Keto Ketone Supplements. Carol Fit Stationary Bike. Organifi Superfood. Viore Clothing. And Let's Get Check.com Home Testing. And please visit the bradkearns.com shop page for my personal selection of favorite products for health, fitness, and peak performance with great discount offers. And now here we go with the show, mofo.
Every time I paddleboard, I was like, gosh, this is such a good workout. And so how could we create something that kind of mimics that motion, that was simple, easy to use? And that's kind of where that first spark for 360 came, and it grew into what you have now. The guys that could stay hungry, even the ones that weren't necessarily the most talented, they ended up, in my opinion, being the best players. I'm really good at being consistent with training and just physical things. I've really been trying to take that same intensity and apply it to creating, whether it be content, products, whatever.
Hi, everyone. It's time to talk to Dan the Monkii Man. That's right. His name is Dan Vinson, founder, operator of the interesting fitness entity known as Monkii, Monkii. They design high quality fitness tools so you can get stronger, lose weight, and be wild, all from home. And he promotes living this wild ancestral lifestyle. It's a really cool story. It goes in a lot of different directions. We talk about his athletic background, where he was a high-level high school athlete at the legendary program of De La Salle in Northern California, the greatest high school football team ever with the longest winning streak. He was a lacrosse player, and he had a long and interesting journey from scrub walk-on at Georgetown University to earning his way into a scholarship and a starting spot at the end of his college journey. And we talked a lot about some mindset and mentality aspects of, fighting through things and doing things for the right reasons, for the passion. And Dan has extended that fitness mentality, that competitive intensity, that desire to pursue and achieve goals all the way into his adult life and his business operation, as well as his adventures. So we talk about, very interestingly, his climbing of El Capitan, a little bit of a different journey than we're familiar with Alex Honnold free soloing the thing in a few hours. But when you actually want to climb it the proper way, the safe way, with the ropes and all that stuff, it can take several days. And he talks about a couple failed attempts and how they finally succeeded. Also talking about the double crossing of the Grand Canyon, and then into his basic daily routine, which is a beautiful story, especially he in the millennials age group, mid-30s, living this beautiful dream life that's so different from our generations past, where you were kind of on these treadmills that were pretty narrow in scope, where you went to college, got a degree, got your resume going, had a couple crappy jobs, got a better job, maybe went into the eventual 9-to-5 drab existence. And he's out there living this nice life in the wilderness and also running a proper business. And the interesting story of how Monkii got started, I think you'll like. They went over to Kickstarter, raised millions of dollars from faithful, interested people that said, yeah, I'll give you guys a shot. And then they came up with this really cool fitness equipment. He's nicely enough sent me his 360 ball, which is an amazing invention. And you can do so many things right there at home, strapping it over a door. So we talk about the transitions in the fitness mindset and the fitness industry, going from this no pain, no gain gym mentality, group exercise mentality, to just integrating fitness into your daily life. And I think that's what his operation, his movement at Monkii and the Live Wild or Die podcast is all about. So here we go with Dan Vinson. Enjoy. Dan Vinson, the Monkii Man. We are on, and we got a lot to talk about. We had a great warm-up show with me appearing on your podcast. So now we're going to turn the tables and hear what this whole exciting monkey lifestyle is all about.
Thanks, Brad. I'm glad to have you driving now. So stoked to continue the conversation.
Yeah. So tell me about the podcast and then the business that you guys have been building, the community. And then I also want to get into your background and your athletic achievements and all that stuff. But yeah, let's welcome listeners to the Monkii world.
Well, thank you for having me. No, so we're Monkii, and the podcast is called Live Wild or Die. And I essentially started because I was listening to so many podcasts. I was like, well, I can do that. It's a lot harder than I originally thought. And I actually had a radio show in college. It was called The Grizzly Show. I was really into like backpacking and just the outdoors and all that stuff. So it's just me and some buddies joking around for a few hours once a week. But so I kind of had those roots that I wanted to bring back out. And it's been so much fun. Just a lot of the Monkeys, we get to talk and just talk about kind of the culture around our company and products and training and, stoicism and all these other ancillary things, nutrition that, most brands and companies, you don't get to speak directly like that to your customers unless it's a medium like a podcast. So it's been awesome. I love it. And I love consuming them as well. So it's been fun to be in that scene and get to talk to folks like you. And then Monkii, we launched
this is Monkii, people. Monkii.
I had to spell it different. But yeah, Monkii, our website's monkii.co, and we launched on Kickstarter 2014, and we raised, I think it was like $111,000 the first time. And that was for the Monkii Bars original, which are these guys here, which we essentially like hand assembled these things. I still have scars actually from twisting all the caps together. So, to launch the product, we kind of forced our friends and families to back the campaign, because the way Kickstarter works is it's essentially like pre-sales. So you put up a project, you have reward levels. If people back at a certain reward level, they'll get that physical good. At least that's how we did it. And so we did our first one in 2014. We did another campaign for Monkii Bars 2 in 2016. That did $1 million. And then we released Pocket Monkii in 2017. That did $1 million. And we did 360 in 2019. That was our biggest campaign ever. And then I'm standing on the Stoic Gym for Your Feet right now. And we just finished that campaign. That was like 750-ish. And, yeah, so it's been really fun. It's such a cool medium and platform to just kind of invent and explore ideas and work with this community that's so engaged and excited that it's, we're fortunate to live in a time where that's possible.
Yeah, geez, I barely knew about this thing. I'm a little bit aware of how it works now, but when you're saying that you raise this much money or that much money, and it's a pre-sale, so that means that you just sold $1 million worth of your 360 ball, for example, and so then you're going to go make them, and everyone's going to get one. But it's great. It takes a little bit of the risks out, and also I'm sure the startup costs to create a fitness device are phenomenal. And then the general model is you're going to cross your fingers and hope you sell one, even though there's 2,000 in your garage. That's a tough way to break in.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. And it's not 100% risk free, but it's like, instead of buying $1 million worth of product up front, you can invest, a relatively small amount into this campaign. And like, if it fails, then at least you failed fast and, you don't lose your house or something like that. So it's such a cool platform, and the community is just awesome. So shout out to the Monkeys and Kickstarter.
Right. And you told me offline that you can't just go on there and say, hey, here's my spaceship, join my Kickstarter. You kind of have to have a following to begin with. Otherwise, who's going to find you and who's going to be interested in pre-ordering a Stoic mat? The Stoic mat is kind of this uneven surface that you're standing on. Like I like standing on a pebble mat. I think this is a really cool idea. But tell me where'd that invention come from?
So we did for the Monkii 360 campaign, there's a scene where in the morning I'm doing my like kind of morning routine where I'm reading Marcus Aurelius meditations, I'm taking an ice bath. I'm doing all these like quote unquote stoic things. And we just thought it'd be fun to like stand on a bed of nails. So essentially we built like a pull-up bar, and then we it was real bed of nails. So I'm hanging from this pull-up bar, just barely kind of lowering myself onto it for just, a fun scene in the video. And David, who's my Monkii partner, co-founder, he comes up to me one day, "Hey man, what if we did like this bed of nails standing mat?" And I said, "Yeah, that'd be rad. But what if we also did this kind of natural surface standing mat?" So essentially what Stoic is it's a modular gym for your feet. So there's a bunch of different surfaces. We have forest floor, river rock, bed of nails. There are these uneven surfaces, and then there's a balance beam in between. So you can I'm standing on it right now. You're kind of like, you're standing in a much more engaged way where I'm just kind of gripping at the ground a little more. I'm shifting my weight a little bit more. And, I don't have that like end of the day fatigue that I get from just, a flat, hard surface essentially. So it's been awesome. I can't wait to get it out. We should have those hopefully like April, May, this 2021.
Oh yeah. That's a huge deal for your proprioception, balance, working the stabilizer muscles throughout the lower body. And the benefits are fantastic. Katie Bowman talks about this a lot. She's been promoting the Pebble mat and things like that for years, and Move Your DNA and other books. And oh my gosh, all that stuff it really makes the stand-up desk experience much more fun. I have one of those balance. It's like a round board that you have to balance on to make it straight. So I like standing on that or tipping it backwards and stretching the calves. But just the variation is, I think, Katie's main point that she makes, that you don't have to stand on this thing all day long in one spot. And that's kind of weird. It's uneven, but you might be sitting down in the next hour and then back up onto the Stoic board. And that's what's really cool. Or maybe reaching for a fitness device like the 360 ball hanging off the door. And then we're talking about a really varied and active and, stimulatory day for the cells throughout the body that perceive balance and awareness of space.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. And I've been a big fan of Katie for a long time. So yeah, it was just something that we had this kind of like, it's kind of a weird idea if you think about it. Like we literally, to make it, David and I, we literally hot glued rocks and sticks, branches, ferns from
We got to see a picture of the original one.
Yeah,
put it on Instagram or something.
Oh, for sure. No, we have it. And we essentially, we hot glued them, packed them, we shipped them to Taiwan where that's where the factory is. They 3D scanned it. And then, I got what I'm standing on here. So it's definitely a little bit out there, but it's really cool. And my feet feel I just feel better after standing all day. And it's, Katie's point of like, well, if you're standing in the same position all day, you're still. So it kind of adds this like active standing element, I think, into folks that are kind of already at a standing desk or, maybe you're working way there, but I'm really excited.
Oh yeah, that one's going to be a sensation. This is such an exciting path you're on. I mean, so you got into this on the heels of this long devotion to athletics and fitness and coaching CrossFit and all that. And then just one day you had the idea for the original. It was a kind of a portable pull-up bar.
Yeah, I mean, the idea really, so I was a college athlete and then I was a wilderness ranger in 2007. So I was up in Sequoia National Forest, so kind of up the Kern River area outside of Bakersfield in California. But I was a wilderness ranger. I was still in school and I built this like kind of Rocky IV style wild gym out in the woods. I'd like squat logs, lift rocks, do pull-ups off branches.
Oh, is that the video?
Yeah, that's the original one. That.
Okay, yeah. So that's on YouTube, people. This is fun stuff. What's the title of the video?
I think it's like
outdoor wilderness gym or something.
Yeah, I can. It's like I can send you the link, but yeah, I was really into the survival shows on Discovery at the time, so I did a lot of filming when I was out there. But essentially, I had this experience out working in the wilderness, and it was such a I was 21 at the time. It was such kind of like that life-changing, defining time in my life. And when I went back to school for my senior year, I ended up I never started, or I just rode the bench basically my whole athletic career. And I ended up starting and getting a scholarship to come back like an additional post-grad year, which was awesome. But that experience was kind of this catalyst that David and I had for trying to create a company around fitness and the outdoors. And our first rendition of that was called Wild Man Revivals. This was like 2011, totally crashed and burned. It was essentially like outdoor fitness retreats. They were going to be in Montana, and just, it crashed and burned. It was a cool idea, but it never took flight. We kind of took some time off for a couple of years. And then David was in grad school out here in Fort Collins, Colorado. And, we tried another concept called the Wild Gym, which was essentially like these outdoor gyms, like calisthenics gyms, like they're all over New York, things like that. They were that concept, but with more of a wild twist. So we were using like more natural, ingredients, I guess. So it was like rocks, wood, or at least things that looked like wood, to give it kind of this more natural, wild aesthetic. And it was essentially like an outdoor kind of CrossFit / calisthenics park.
It sounds cool. I like it.
It was rad. I mean, we won business competitions. We were going to put one in Fort Collins. We had so much momentum, but it's a horrible business model to be selling to like municipalities and schools and things like that. I think it'd be a great nonprofit. So anyone that wants to start that, hit me up. Or if you want to, I think it'd be so much fun to have these. It's like, why aren't there more of these just simple things that allow you, you're on a run or jog or hike, you can stop at the park, bust out a few pull-ups. I feel like it's really common in cities, but not so much out here, at least. So anyways, that crashed and burned. And we'd had this concept of, well, if we can't do these huge installations, maybe we create something that people could bring with them into the wild. So that was the original Monkii bar. So it's a super small thing, cool products. People liked it, but it was a little like technical to adjust. Like the adjuster, it's this custom thing. It wasn't super intuitive unless you were maybe like a rock climber. So then we released Monkii Bars 2 as a kind of incremental improvement on that concept. That did pretty well. And then Pocket Monkii, I think, was like where we really started to hit our stride of like, okay, this thing, Pocket Monkii is essentially like a tiny strap system. It pretty much literally fits in your pocket. You can toss it over a door, or there's an outdoor anchor. You can go for a run, get a little body weight workout in. And unfortunately, we're sold out of those. There's more coming in spring 2021 though, so stand by. And then for 360 specifically, so that concept came from paddleboarding actually. So it's that stroking core flexion action. It's just every time I paddleboard, I was like, gosh, this is such a good workout. And so how could we create something that kind of mimicked that motion, that was simple, easy to use? And that is kind of where that first spark for 360 came, and it grew into what you have now. So it's been a journey.
Yeah, I guess this year, with people forced out of the gyms and into their homes to work out, it's probably good timing to be selling home-based fitness apparatus.
Oh, yeah. I mean, I always preface this by I really wish it was for a different reason, because it's just the whole thing is such a bummer. But, we sold out of Pocket Monkeys in March. We were really concerned because the supply chains were shutting down, and it was like, how are we going to survive this? And then there was like that weekend here in the States where it just blew up. And, we sold out within a couple of weeks, and unfortunately we've been sold out since then. But, it's, if you're in the fitness industry now, it's like, it's certainly a demand. That's for sure.
What do you think the future will be? We're going to see a shift in our society's approach to fitness overall when everything's, let's say, over with and back to normal, if there ever is going to be a back to normal.
Yeah, I think if you would have asked me that maybe a couple months ago, I would have said, oh yeah, people are never going to go back. Gyms will never be the same. It's just everyone's going to work out from home. I think it might be kind of a blend now where people are so sick of being kind of isolated, or at least not being able to interact in the same way, that there might be this backlash where more people than ever go to the gym. But, I think that time could be a few years out still, unfortunately. So yeah, I think short term, more home based, more outside, more like individual. Long term, I could see this kind of backswing into these more social situations like a gym or running club, whatever.
Yeah, I think it kind of illuminates what the purpose of some of these, foundations of our lifestyle are, such as going to the gym, and that social aspect is huge. That community aspect, the motivating sense that you walk through the door that you get, at least I get when I walk in there. I know everyone's getting down to business, and it's so easy to go and put my body through the motions, much easier than, let's say, at home, where I'm already a pretty motivated guy. I prioritize fitness, so I'll get the workout done, but I'll be telling myself a story in my head the whole time, like, maybe I should do it later. I'm kind of busy. I should probably get to my emails, but when you're in the gym, you're there, and the camaraderie and all that stuff is huge. But I feel like we're going to, hit a hybrid mode where everyone also has an opportunity to do these miniature workouts. We call them micro workouts that we've talked about a lot together at home. And so you blend that in with these forays to the gym or to the golf course or whatever, where you're going for the full experience, but you also have this in between way that's not so logistically challenging.
Right. It is. Yeah, it is. My wife's a yoga teacher, and she still goes to the gym regularly. She's probably there right now. But, yeah, I think there are those like kind of, what would be the right word? There's these other elements to things like going to a gym, meeting up with the group, the intangibles that, maybe there's a little more importance to those than we realize. And this is kind of illuminating that.
So you talked about your athletic background. I found out you went to the one of the ultimate powerhouse high schools of all time, De La Salle, who had the record for the longest football winning streak in the country, right? They won every game for years and years. It was crazy.
Yeah, it was my senior year. I played football my freshman year, but I actually played ice hockey and lacrosse, which for a kid in California, a bit unusual. But yeah, my senior year was I think the last year of the quote unquote streak, but I think it was 13 years or something like that. And, it was fun. It was a great environment for me just at the time. I was so into sports and athletics and all that. It was just such a perfect environment. And I think one thing, those of us that weren't in the varsity football program, what we didn't realize is those guys trained. We thought they just trained their asses off all day, all the time, which they did, but they had an excellent strength coach, and they did a really good job of not burning themselves out. So I think the outsiders looking in are like, these guys just outwork everyone. They just work so hard, but they did it in a very smart, non-exhaustive way. So I think that had a big impact on why they were so successful.
Yeah, I also enjoyed reading about Ladouceur. Is that how you say his name?
Oh, yeah, Ladouceur. Yeah.
Ladouceur. Yeah, and he had sort of an evolved approach to coaching high school football, if you want to put it politely, where most of it's, these coaches just are screaming at the kids. They're obsessed with winning, and it's kind of a strange environment. And it seemed like he had a more holistic approach where he wanted them to be like sort of in the John Wooden mode of growing up and being good character people and sportsmanlike and all that kind of stuff, and not taunting and swaggering when they won their 238th game in a row. They're just going there and getting down to business. But in your case, being in that rigorous athletic environment, it's a private school. They're very excel in all the different sports, and that launched you on a path where you had a dream of performing in college too. So tell us about your next step in your athletics.
Yeah. So I played lacrosse in college at Georgetown, and my freshman year in high school, so at De La Salle, that was the first year we ever had a lacrosse team. So it was kind of all the guys that didn't make the basketball team, didn't play football. It was just we were like almost all the rejects, honestly, because, the athletics were so competitive there. And I played ice hockey and, at a pretty high level. So it was an easy transition for me. But I got into school back in DC, and I didn't get recruited or anything like that, but I walked on my freshman year, and, there was quite a few walk-ons at the beginning, and they just, each practice, there was less and less and less. And I was finally the last one. And I remember they called me in one day and said, they would call me Vinny. Hey, Vinny, we think you can help us out this year. So you're not going to be on the team, but we want you to keep training and come out to some practices. So I'm like, okay, sweet. That sounds good to me. The guy that played my position was like an All-American, one of the best in the country. So it's not like I was going to be in the games anyways. So what I didn't really realize was I wasn't really in the program. I was like this weird kind of ancillary guy that I would go out to practices occasionally. They'd call me or email me. I'd go out my high school gear. Everyone's in their fresh, Nike cleats, fresh equipment, new sticks, all that. I'm in my high school stuff, just sticking out like a sore thumb. And I'd just get beat up on for a couple hours and then get sent back my way to the dorms. So I did that for a year. And then I also just trained my ass off in the weight room and I put on some weight, got just quite a bit stronger. We had a great strength coach. And then the next year I made the team and just essentially rode the bench until a few games into my senior year. And that was after I'd spent that summer in the wilderness. So, I'm hiking 5 to 15 miles a day at altitude, up and down. And I was also training. So once I realized I was going to be spending this essentially the entire summer in the backcountry, I immediately went to okay, well, how am I going to maintain my summer off-season, training program? So I went out there and, like I had mentioned, built this kind of rudimentary weight room. So I'd hike all day, do trail work, cutting out trees, hiking peaks, doing all kinds of just general backcountry wilderness ranger work. And then
Rocky Balboa, man.
Exactly. Yeah, exactly.
You're going to go back to the battlefield with the fancy gear. You're getting super strong out there.
Yeah. So it's just this accumulated volume was huge. Plus doing strength work on top of it, a little more specific. And when I came back to school, I was definitely in the best shape of my life, and it paid off. So I got to kind of have this mini Rudy experience, I guess, where I went from essentially no one ever heard me, who the hell is this guy, to having a pretty successful kind of season and a half. So it was fun. It was a really cool way to finish school. And after that, I went and fought fire for 2 seasons up in Montana, which was awesome. Just so much fun. Just getting to stay in that team environment and be outside, do this physical work, travel the country. And the first fires I went on were actually in California in 2008, which was gnarly, but also super fun. So I did that for 2 seasons, and then I was a wilderness ranger for 3 seasons before kind of transitioning fully to CrossFit, strength and conditioning, and all that. And I've been out in Colorado since 2013.
So back to that freshman kid who walks on, all the other ones get discouraged and go away. They don't even have the charity to give you the proper gear, but you're hanging around there the whole season. That must have been kind of a extraordinary experience, and also something for the coaches to observe. What's this kid doing? He's still coming and taking a beating every day.
Yeah, it wasn't like I wasn't there every day, but I would get called in for practice as kind of a special dummy player because I had a kind of specialized position. But I was always in the weight room, and I was kind of always lurking around the team, So I wasn't necessarily good friends with anyone on the team because I was just kind of this weirdo from California, lurking on the outskirts, trying to scrape my way in. So even once I was actually an official member, I just think there was a little bit of the East Coast, West Coast cultural differences that, some of my best friends are from playing on the team, but it took a little bit of time to kind of assimilate, I guess.
Yeah, they're not pulling many recruits from the West Coast because there's not that many schools that even field a team. I imagine, and lacrosse is huge on the East Coast, and I know there's some pretty prominent programs out here on the West. My friend's kid is playing. He played in the Bay Area, and he went off to play at a prominent school. So it's there, but yeah, you must have been the the outlier.
Yeah, it was, looking back, it's man, it was one of those things where it's I really had to turn off that mental switch of I'm definitely not necessarily wanted here right now, but I'm going to come anyways, so I think it was more of a mental thing than physical, so, but it worked out.
And I mean, you were pretty young to be able to, reason with these philosophical, crossroads there, but you kept going. What do you think was different about you than, let's say, the other walk-ons that went for a little foray and then just bailed?
I think I just believed I could compete at I guess I knew with enough time, I had the work ethic to kind of build myself up to compete at that level. And it was kind of like what happened the very first practice, tryout, whatever, went out on the field. It was the guy that played my position. We kind of went head to head and I smoked him. And the whole sideline's going like, freaking out. That never happened again. But that initial moment was like, I think it kind of, surprised everyone, to say the least. And what that showed me was like, there's at least like the slightest bit of possibility that I can hang with these guys. And that was enough motivation and encouragement to just be like, okay, well, I can do this. I know it's not going to happen overnight. It's going to be this like incremental process of just consistently showing up and trying to consistently get better, stronger, faster, improve my skills. I knew I had essentially a year to do that. So that's what I did. I just dedicated to, training consistently, working on my skills consistently. And the next year, like I said, things worked out.
Yeah. Wow. That's a beautiful story. And those elements that are so important, I think, we might be living in an age where we're getting puffed up with a lot of hype, and with the social media and the gurus and the messaging, especially that, people in that age group get, where they're trying to form their identity and pursue their calling, or even at any age where people are saying, don't work for the white man. It's ridiculous to be stuck in Joe Rogan says that every third show, like it's a pathetic life to live and dwindle, and, you go for your dreams and take risks and all that. But I think that message can get distorted sometimes, where people get sort of deluded about, how much work it's going to take to be an entrepreneur running your own business, or even a kid, trying to get a Division I athletic scholarship from being a walk-on. It's no funny business. And, I feel like there's a little bit of delusion going on, where people want things really quickly to happen, pretty easily, not too much struggle, maybe a little, and then, go on with the fairy tale life. And so, you had that glimpse, which I think is a really important part of the story, where you smoked the starter just once, and then maybe he, underestimated you, and then he brought his A game every time he faced you again. But when that door cracks open a little bit, where someone can, you can really honestly believe deep yourself that you do have a chance here, rather than, hey, I'm going to play in the NBA because I scored a few buckets for my small town high school team. That's when you're going to get slapped around and could have some, a hugely negative experience that impacts you the rest of your life.
Right. And I think I should preface this, or at least add the note that my whole goal going into it was just to be on the team. It's like starting or playing, that was never even really even considered. I just want to be on the team, and I think that getting that wedge in that very first day, just that tiniest bit, it made me realize, okay, I can at least be on the team. And I loved being in that environment and the training and the camaraderie and just kind of having that infrastructure, I guess. So that was the entire goal. And then beyond that, it was like, if I got to play, awesome. If not, it's like, it's not going to define the rest of my life. So.
Right. You take those incremental steps. And so, once you got on the team, got a uniform, got to throw away your high school crap, then I guess is a great time to look at maybe setting the goal of being a starter, or taking another incremental step, but only when it's realistic, right? So I think that's another part is, dreaming of going from walk-on to scholarship athlete and starter, that could have been self-defeating.
Right. Yeah, it's not, I guess, it's not that I didn't want to, be on the field for the games and all that, but I didn't try any less hard because I wasn't, and I think a lot of guys actually just kind of, cause, you got to keep in mind, everyone on the team was an All-American. Everyone was a star. It's just the best of the best. And if they weren't, I think a lot of guys just kind of gave up and they didn't kind of reach their potential because of that. So, and I'm sure that happens a lot across the sports, but just staying, like the guys that could stay hungry, even the ones that weren't necessarily the most talented, they ended up, in my opinion, being the best players.
Right. Yeah. I guess you'd probably apply that insight to business, anywhere else. Being a father, a partner. We have to try to bring our A game all the time instead of just sink into patterns and ruts.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, it's the business side now. It's I'll see these like competitive things come out just unexpectedly, even, and I've heard you talk about this, but I've really tried the last few years to turn. I'm really good at being consistent with training and just physical things. I've really been trying to take that same intensity and apply it to creating, whether it be content, products, whatever. But for whatever reason, I struggle with that. I don't know if it's just the nature of pounding keys all day or what, but kind of having it framed in that kind of athletic perspective has been useful for me. So thank you for that.
Well, shoot, I'm trying to do the same, and it's a challenge to, leverage these wonderful skills that you built in one arena and apply them to the other one. And I wish I could, we were talking about my morning routine on your show, and I'm so proud of it. And I tell people every single day I get down on the ground, and I do this core strengthening, mobility, flexibility sequence, and it forms a foundation of my fitness and helps me boost my performance in the proper workouts. But it's like, am I that consistent and disciplined with turning off my email inbox when I'm supposed to be finishing a book? The answer is no. I'm a sorry ass, and I get distracted and pulled away. And, I'm talking about to-do lists and prioritizing your workflow and, honoring the highest expression of your talents and delegating stuff that you can. And I'm getting, C minuses, D plus, B minus grades in all these areas where my fitness ambitions, I'm getting an A plus. So, crossing that bridge over, it's a constant battle. And then you see some athletes where, if I feel like if you're a grade A athlete at whatever level, if you were a high school, all CIF, all section or all state player, I would take a chance on hiring that kid to work in my warehouse for my large fictional business, just because of what they brought. They brought the heat on the football field. Or any kid who graduated from LaDucer's program at De La Salle, if I saw that on the resume, I'd be like, oh, okay, well, forget the interview. Let's go have you working on the boxes in the corner there, because what this person's been through. But then a lot of people can't come close to leveraging that, and they have train wreck life in one area where they're setting records in the gym, but they're mean to their wife when they get home.
Oh, absolutely. What's interesting about Laddister is he was a religion teacher at school. He was like this dark wizard walking around campus, very kind of solemn in nature, very like, you never saw him get super mad. You never saw him get super happy, just very kind of even keel. And there's a book, actually, highly recommend it. It's called When the Game Stands Tall. It's by Neil Hayes. And it really talks about more of kind of the philosophical thoughts and elements to that team and of Laddister and how he kind of cultivated. It was really like, I think love's actually the most accurate word. It was really this culture of love and accountability to each other and trying to do your best because you cared for your team. So it's not this like bloodthirsty kill athletic mentality. It was really based around love, which is probably not what you'd expect.
Not for 239 wins in a row, whatever it was. Oh, good stuff. All right. And so you finished this college athletic experience, and then you had all these goals, this focus, and it sounds like you turned it toward some of these extreme wilderness feats and challenges. So I want to hear about the rim to rim to rim, climbing El Capitan, hiking the John Muir Trail. For those of us who can live vicariously, boy, it'd be fun to hear about that stuff.
Sure. Yeah. So I did a race I was living in Montana. This is while I was firefighting. I did a race in Montana called the Glacier Challenge, and it was 50 total miles combined with like some biking, some mountain biking, some canoeing, some kayaking, some running. And that just like, it kicked my ass because I'd never done anything close to that length. I was always, I was a field athlete. And then when I was a wilderness ranger, a buddy of mine he's one of the top rangers now in Yosemite. He's like plucking people off the side of El Cap in a helicopter. But, he's like, hey, you should do this hike this one day. It's like 34 miles out and back. And I'd been hiking all summer and, I'd maybe done 15 or 20 in a day, but nothing close to that. So I did this huge hike. It was 34 miles. It took like maybe 11, 12 hours, something like that. And I remember finishing and being like, oh, it wasn't that bad. Like I walked the whole thing, just good pace, no big deal. And then fast forward to now, I got kind of into the ultra scene, did the rim to rim to rim. And to train for those rim to rim to rim specifically, we just had our daughter. So just time, I couldn't go out and do these like all day training runs that I'd done previously for these other ultras. So essentially what I did was like micro workouts throughout the day. So I'd throw on my weight vest, throw my daughter in the stroller, go for a 3-mile walk around the neighborhood, stop, do pull-ups, dips, some core stuff at the little calisthenics park on the way. Got a lot of weird looks from the neighbors because it's like a very tactical looking vest. But anyway, so I would do that. I would just hold her, walk around the little courtyard in front. And I was able to kind of accumulate and aggregate this volume that I thought was appropriate for rim to rim to rim. And then as far as like long run training, I would do, instead of doing like, 20, 25 mile days, I would just cluster 2 or 3 days in a row of like 10 to 15 miles. So I think the longest I ran for that was 15 miles. The longest like single day training run was 15. And then, I was doing plenty of body weight training. I was doing like these focused strength sessions. That's always been important to me. Just that having that kind of solid chassis is how I describe it. Like I was doing a lot of deadlifts, a lot of weighted squats, Olympic weightlifting. That's just something I've always felt has added to just being a robust athlete for something like that, especially the Grand Canyon. There's so much vert that I think for me personally, I needed that strength. So we had a group of like a dozen people. We went out 3 a.m. in the morning. We start down the Bright Angel Trail. Half a mile into it, I popped my ankle, stepped on a rock, ankle rolled. And I couldn't believe it. I'd spent this whole year training for this thing. I had all these friends from all over the country meet us there. And I had to pull the chute, man. I had to hike out. So fortunately it wasn't like a horrible sprain, but it wasn't something you're going to do 50 miles in the Grand Canyon where you need to be self-sufficient. So I took a month or so and just rehabbed and was able to go back a month later. And I ended up doing it essentially alone. It was an interesting experience.
So you started 3 a.m. and how long does this thing take? You're going from the South Rim down to the bottom, up to the North Rim, down to the bottom and back to where you started. This is a classic for those in the endurance scene. It's kind of a classic achievement, a rim to rim to rim, they call it.
Right. So I'm not a very fast endurance athlete. I think I'm more of that I think my muscle fiber type is that hybrid of strength, power, and then not so heavy on the endurance, which makes sense because all the sports I played were kind of that more sprint based. And actually my parents did a genetic test and I think it came back as like elite power lifters or something like that. I've never done mine personally, but theirs came back. So I would assume I'm at least similar to what they have, but I'm not a fast endurance athlete. So I think it was like a 17-hour day. I mean, it was full on. And I stopped a lot. I rested quite a bit. But when we went that first time, I think the fastest guy did it in, I want to say 12-ish hours. And, there's guys that do it in, I think 5 or 6 hours. It's just crazy fast. So, but it's the Grand Canyon, it's the vertical, man. Just like even going downhill, trying to run, at least from the North Rim back down to the rivers, like it's just brutal. So you end up hiking quite a bit. And then I ended up running more of the flats, and it was pretty hot when I went. This was mid-May. So I was stopping and jumping in the creek, which was fortunately there. And, for me, these things, it's always been about doing it versus like, how fast can I do it? So I'm just training in a way and approaching these things in a way where it's more about completion versus like performance. And that's just the reality where I'm at in life. For El Cap, I failed. I guess thinking about this, I fail at these things a lot before they actually get completed. I think El Cap, it took me like 3 or 4 tries till we actually topped out. And the final push took us, like, we climbed for 31 hours straight. We kind of put as much food and water as we could in packs, and we started at like 4 PM and climbed through the night, climbed the whole next day. And then we topped out at around, I think it was like 12:30 in the morning. We topped out. And this was in May. So it's pretty cold. There's still quite a bit of snow up on top. This is in Yosemite. And my partner wakes me up. We kind of got to the top, got water. And then we didn't have tents or anything. So we just kind of like flaked out the ropes and laid on those just as a little bit of insulation from the ground.
And bummer. Of course you don't have a tent because you're not lugging it up the wall.
No way.
Oh my
man.
gosh.
No way. So he woke me up, it's maybe 3 AM at this point. Said, "Hey man, I think I'm hypothermic. I need to go." So instead of, what would take maybe like an hour at a casual pace, there's a rappel route where it takes you right back to the base. We hiked like 10 miles around. We're out of food. We're drinking water just straight from the creek, which we both ended up getting giardia, by the way, which is a bummer. So we ended up hiking all through the night, through the snow. And it turned like already an epic day into like an extra epic day. So that was
So you went 31 hours straight climbing, slept for a few, and then had to hike down.
And then we hiked down like 10 miles. I'll never forget. I was so exhausted at one point. There was this little dry patch of pine needles. I just like, "Hey man, I need to take a nap," and I hit the ground and just was out. Never before, never since have I ever fallen asleep like that. I was just at that physical limit, but
yeah,
it was awesome.
You heard of that female ultra runner that is extraordinary. She beat everybody, including all the men in the 200-mile race in Utah. I forget her name.
Is it Courtney DeWalter?
I don't know, but she announced to her pacer that she needed to take a nap, and usually she goes straight through, and that's one of her advantages. And she lay down, and then she woke up 1 minute later. The pacer timed the nap. He wanted to keep track of all this, and she felt great. She goes, "Wow, how long was I out?" And he said, "You were out 1 minute." She's like, "Oh, I feel fine. Let's go." So I think when that brain is all the way gone, it's probably true that if a very, very short nap can just reset. And then, I don't know, how long was your nap?
I think it was maybe 10 minutes or something like that. I just remember waking up. I woke up because it was cold. I woke up shivering, and it's like, okay, we got to go.
Wow.
And then we jetted out of there. So yeah, it was a wild experience. I
guess you didn't time your start time of 4 PM. Ideally you'd get up there, at 9 in the morning, and then, have a picnic and hike down. But I guess you didn't know how long everything would take.
We knew it was going to take us at least 24 hours. So we figured like it'd be better to start in the afternoon, go through the areas that we were a little more familiar with in the dark, and then, be higher up, have kind of all day to top out, which almost worked. But I'm hoping to go back this spring with it's a gentleman named Hans Floring, Tahoe resident, actually. He's held the speed record on the nose with like guys like Alex Honnold, and he's probably held the record like, I don't know, at least a dozen times. And he's a wild man doing wild things. So hopefully he's kind of a rock climbing hero of mine. So I'm hoping to get on the rope with him in 2021.
Oh yeah, I remember when he first broke the record was over 20 years ago. We were
Oh yeah.
sponsoring him
Oh no.
with Cytomax, located in Concord, California, down the street
Oh,
from De
okay.
La Salle. Now the show's coming full circle, people,
Right.
especially if
Right.
you don't know any of these strange references. But interestingly, on El Cap, I mean, we're familiar with, you know, I'm familiar with the speed record set by Hans Florine back when in 4 or 5 hours. And then when we saw Free Solo, Alex Honnold finished in 4 hours. And so obviously Alex is taking less time because he doesn't have to deal with the ropes and the equipment. But take me through, an ascent with the proper gear rather than being the Spider-Man who's going to fall to his death if he makes one false move. It's a lot more logistically challenging than just finding a place to put your foot and climbing, because you got to be working with a partner, setting ropes. How does it take that long, and what are you doing with all those hours?
Right. So the first few times that we failed, we were doing kind of a traditional big wall style where we camped on the wall. We actually slept on a ledge about halfway up. The problem with that is you're carrying this like 80-pound bag that you have to essentially climb a pitch. So that's roughly a rope length. So you're climbing this pitch, you're putting in gear for protection as you go. So if you fall, the gear will catch your fall with the rope. So the leader would climb the pitch. They get to an anchor. They fix the rope or tie it off essentially to the anchor. Then the leader has to haul this 80-pound bag up a vertical wall. Or what's actually the problem on El Cap is the lower part of the nose, which is the kind of standard route, the easiest route. It's not quite vertical. So there's a ton of friction against the bag when it's its heaviest. So it's actually easier to haul.
What's in the bag? The food and the sleeping bags?
So water is probably the heaviest thing, actually. So you've got a ton of water, you've got food, sleeping bags, sleeping pad, a poop tube, very important. And I'm trying to think what else, probably an extra rope, maybe some extra gear. You try and be as minimalist as possible, but if you're planning on spending 3 to 5 days up there, it's like you need a decent amount of stuff. So
the route is set with anchors, you call them, right? And that's someone back when in the 60s or whatever drilled into the rock and made a nice holder for your clips where you clip the rope. And so I guess the route is set, but each new climber has to put their own ropes in there as you ascend. And so I guess this is what takes all day.
Exactly. Yeah. So you're having to, it's not like when Honnold soloed, he's climbing exceptionally fast. It's just that he doesn't have to stop. Whereas we're constantly stopping because you have to take out gear. You have to haul the bag. It's just like this snowball effect. But so that's kind of the big wall style where you're hauling the bag, you're camping on the side of the cliff face, which is really fun. Actually, that was one of the coolest nights of my life. Actually, was sleeping up there. It's called El Cap Tower. Waking up in the morning and it's, beautiful sunny Yosemite. It's just such a wild experience. But when we actually did it, when we completed it, we went ultralight. So we had like probably a little 20-liter kind of nylon sack backpack with I think I had 4 liters of water and just a bunch of bars essentially. And just, we essentially were out of food and water for a day, more or less, and just had to kind of suffer through the top part of it. But, people, I'm not that great of a climber. There's guys that do it in 12 hours, no problem. And the fastest time now is under 2 hours by Alex Honnold and Tommy Caldwell. So they broke the 2-hour threshold, which is it's incredible.
So they are they're not rushing through any of the safety measures. They have to clip in, but I guess they're probably taking way more risks than Alex did without rope. And so they might be falling 7 times and then getting back on because they're climbing like monkeys, so to speak.
It's definitely a safety third scenario where it's speed, style, safety. I mean, the way so when Honnold and Tommy Caldwell set the speed record, very, very, very few climbers would do it in that style. I mean, they're risking huge falls. And a lot of times they're in situations where they're in a death fall situation. Even though they have a rope on, they're just they're kind of whittling down the safety factor to such a thin razor sharp margin that there's tons of situations where it's like, if they fell, there's a high likelihood they could die for sure.
Oh, so they're putting in fewer and more distant free fall options there, as opposed to the person with the 80-pound pack. You're probably clipping into every single hold, which come how often are those things there on the rock?
So you can bring they're like these little aluminum nuts that you can wedge into the crack, and then there's another thing called a cam, which you might have seen has the triggers. So we brought, we probably had like 20 pieces of protection. So we can essentially put in gear every 5 to 10 feet. So the biggest fall I would ever take is maybe 10, 15 feet, which I did actually take a couple of nice falls, and I screamed like I would never want anyone to hear me.
I mean, some of these you're just looking down 2,000 feet, right? When you fall. I mean, that can't be too fun, even though the rope catches you.
Yeah, it's at the top. Actually, it's the bottom is a little bit more dangerous because it's not as steep. So if you fall, you actually have the potential of hitting the rock. But at the top, it's vertical or overhanging, so you're essentially falling into air, which is what you want. But it's just, man, it's not a comfortable feeling, to say the least.
So if a novice went out there on a dare and was with an experienced climber, do you think someone could do it out of the blue, or do you have to have some pretty good climbing skills and knowledge, or how do you prepare for something like that?
There's definitely some just technical, there's kind of like this base level of technical knots and just systems. I think someone would need to know, but Hans has taken up like super novices, and he's climbed the nose over 100 times. So if you're going to do it with someone, he's for sure who you'd want to do it with, just because he knows every little nook and cranny of that route. But I mean, I wouldn't want to climb with someone that, hadn't done something comparable, or at least I felt could do it, and that's just me. Cause I'm not Hans, I'm not Honnold, I'm not Tony Caldwell, but from like a fitness standpoint, you could climb the nose with you don't need to be like crazy fit. Cause the way it's typically done is the person that goes up second. So the leader's actually climbing. They're putting in gear and climbing. The second person is using what are called Jumars, which they're essentially these mechanical ascenders that clip to the rope. You slide them up and they don't pull down. So you're essentially like climbing up the rope with these ascenders, and they're stirrups for your feet. So it's not like you're doing one arm pull-ups. You're kind of like stepping up like a ladder, essentially. So it's actually not the Jumaring is not that difficult, especially if you can get a little bit of practice in. It's not a super technical thing. It's just there are these situations where it's like you got to know your knots. You need to understand like the systems, I guess is the best way to describe it. Or if you unclip from something, that means you might swing 50 feet and slam into a ledge. There's all these little things you constantly have to be evaluating, and someone that doesn't have a solid base of just general climbing wouldn't necessarily recognize.
So the attempts that didn't succeed, what happened on those occasions, and what do you do about it? You just stick your thumb out for a helicopter ride from your ranger buddy, or you have to go all the way back down? And what was the turnaround point? Like, what does that look like?
So the first time I went, my buddy Butts, we had slept on El Cap Tower. We climbed. It took us way longer than we thought. We had the huge heavy bag. We slept on the ledge, which was awesome. But we woke up in the morning. We dropped some kind of critical gear, and by he did.
Dropped off the earth.
We dropped there was a special. It's called a cam hook. We dropped, and then we'd also somehow left a rope. You need something important is you need these lower out ropes, because there's these situations where you're in a pendulum situation where the anchor is, the rope is coming off maybe like 45 degrees. So if you just kind of jump off, you're going to swing and get the full effect of gravity. Whereas the way you mitigate that is you use the lower out lines to essentially like slowly lowering yourself out with this additional rope. and that we'd left on a ledge. So we were kind of a shit show, man. We weren't as prepared as we could have been. But so we're about halfway up. We're about 1,500 feet up. It's a 3,000 foot route. So we're pretty much halfway exactly. We're sitting on this 2 foot wide ledge. This gal and her partner come flying by us. They were climbing it in like 10 hours. And, we're just sitting there feeling bad about ourselves. And eventually we're just like, hey, we got to rappel. So rappelling off El Cap is for sure the scariest thing I've ever done. It's just, you're just in this sea of granite on 2 bolts that are, they're solid. They're strong. They're meant to be used in this way, but it's just the way you rappel off El Cap. You don't just follow the line back down or the route back down. You're kind of in this just ocean of granite. There's just nothing. It's vertical. It's smooth.
Is this a actual rappel route for
It is a route.
It
would be like, it's like an established rappel route for the nose specifically, but it's just, you're so exposed out there, and rappelling is, there's no chance for mistake, or there's no option for mistakes. Whereas like, when you're lead climbing, when you're rock climbing, you can fall and you have 20 pieces of gear below you that, even if one fails, it's likely you're going to be fine. Whereas rappelling, it's like, you can't screw up or else you're dead. You wrap off the end of your rope. You don't clip into an anchor properly. Just weird. Rappelling is what kills way more climbers than like just falling, climbing. So it's just a very tenuous situation. And then you add on this extra 80-pound bag that you essentially have to clip to your harness. And it's
why don't you just leave that? Forget that, man.
Yeah.
Like Mount Everest climber, just leave it on the rock somewhere. Just leave it hanging. Right.
Yeah, that would have been nice. And just come get it the next day. Or at least, leave our base camp. But no, so and it takes time. It took us like, when we bailed, it took like, I want to say 6 or 7 hours to rappel. And that's just, being careful, taking your time. Just, again, you can't make mistakes. So after that, that was I believe that was 2015. So we called it quits. Yeah. And
it's an incredibly long time to get back down to the ground.
Yeah, it's not a pleasant experience. I
have so much more appreciation now for anyone who's climbed it, and especially for Alex doing the free solo. When you think about all these logistics that he's leaving behind and doing that, wow, there's a lot of ways to get up to the top. It's a huge accomplishment.
Oh yeah, I actually. This was in 2011. I actually worked in Yosemite it was a strange occurrence where the federal funding got cut for where I was a ranger. So I ended up going to Yosemite and spending like half a season there. It was awesome. But I was climbing with a friend. It's a big route. It's across the valley from El Cap. So you're looking at El Capitan from where we were. It's called Middle Cathedral. But I happened to look down where maybe 2/3 of the way up. I happened to look down and Alex Honnold's like 20 feet below me, fiddling with my gear. It's like, hey, this thing was kind of rubbing, so I'm fixing it for you. And I'm just going, oh, thanks, man. Appreciate it. And I happened to be at this ledge and just kind of stepped off out of the way. And he just like Spider-Man, just kind of like cruised on by. And then he was like down below at one point. He was like all over this face. It was a really bizarre experience, but just seeing him up that high on that particular route, it made me uncomfortable being in that proximity, whereas he's just like, it's just a casual day for him. So
was he roped in, or was he doing his free solo practice?
He was just soloing,
just climbing,
just on a casual, it was
front row seat.
Yeah, it was wild. So and I actually was on top of El Cap when him and Hans did a speed lap in I think it was 2011 as well. Yeah, that was the same season. So I've gotten to see him kind of up close and personal a few times, which is really cool. And there's hundreds of other climbers that have, I'm sure, had similar experiences, but it's pretty cool to see in person, and a little, it makes your palms sweat, man. It really does.
Dang, Dan, you're living the Monkii lifestyle. That's very awesome. I think we should close with just the thing you asked me, like a typical day in your life of how you make this all work, and this huge commitment to fitness. How do you fit that into normal, everyday, busy life, dad, business operator?
What I've been doing the last several months, maybe 2 or 3 months. So I'll wake up, I do yoga, and it could be 5 minutes, it could be an hour. Just kind of, it's all by feel. So I'll just do kind of like a sun salutation, just very simple flow, maybe some foam rolling if I need to work out something. And then from there, I'll do either a calisthenics workout with like a pocket monkey, for example, or I'll do what I've been playing around with is this Quick and the Dead program by Pavel, Strong First. So it's a very simple program. It's kettlebell swings and push-ups, high power output, high intensity, but full recovery and rest. So I'll do that. And that's maybe the first hour to 2 hours of the day. Then what I've been doing is going for a walk. My training is not very sexy. It's very simple. It's very like casual. I'll hike. I have a trail right out the back door here in Colorado. You get a huge view of the mountains. It's awesome. I'll listen to a podcast, like Get Over Yourself, take notes, things like that. I'll usually do 4 or 5 miles. And then that puts me back home by usually between 9 and 10. I'll have my four eggs, whole avocado, hop on the bike, head a mile down to the office, hopefully record a sweet podcast, do some monkey business, whatever. And then it's kind of like a focused, maybe 2 to 5 hour work session. I'll try and do little movement breaks throughout the day. Then I'll head home early afternoon. This is typically between 4 and 5. And I'll do kind of like, I'll play with my kids because my wife usually has, maybe she's teaching yoga or something. I'll play with the kids. And then I have a weight rack in the garage. So I'll be playing with them. I'll bring my older one out. She helps count reps while, maybe do some dips, pull-ups, squats, whatever. So it's kind of like this slow workout program where I'm not like rushing through something. She gets to be a part of it. I'll hold her up on the bar and she, counts and all that. And then, huge dinner, try and get into bed by, 9 or 10. I've been reading fiction before bed recently. The Border trilogy, Cormac McCarthy. It's awesome. Awesome book. And there's something I typically was reading nonfiction, like, technical training stuff or whatever, business books. But then nonfiction, it puts me in such a different sleep state than the more,
it's recommended to read fiction at night instead of the other stuff. I just probably for that reason that you're, less stressful. You're not having to try to remember things or process it in the same way that you would reading a business book or something.
Right.
Wow, man, you live in the dream here. I love it. And your generation, you're mid 30s now.
I'm 35. Yeah.
Yeah. So do you see sort of a trend among your peer group where people are pursuing these alternative career paths and lifestyle practices that are so devoted to health? I mean, I'm hoping that there's a good segment of the population in every age group, but especially I guess you call yourself a millennial. I forget the cutoff points, but, we're watching crappy TV series of young people frolicking and going to bars and, partying a lot through those years. And now you're on a different path. So that's kind of cool.
Yeah, no, it's, gosh, I'm trying to think about what are my peers doing. And, to be honest, I think as Joe Rogan frequently points out, I think there's a lot of people living these lives of kind of this quiet desperation where they make plenty of money. There's really no reason why they couldn't do something else, but for whatever reason, they can't cross that chasm to do something different. So that being said, I think there's definitely a lot of people that are recognizing kind of how the internet's flattened the world in a sense where, it's so easy to start a podcast or have a YouTube channel or create content or, talk to a factory on the other side of the world to make a product. There's just the ability to communicate has really, I think, flattened a lot of things from a business perspective. So I guess I would encourage anyone, like, try it out. It's not that
nice. Yeah. Why not? Give
not
it a
as
shot.
hard as, yeah.
Yeah. So how do we join the Monkii tribe? What do we do next, man?
So you can become a Monkii our website is monkii.co. So monkii.co. typically do most of our social media on Instagram. So we're just at monkii.co, and Live Wild or Die podcast. That's on pretty much all the channels, Spotify, Apple. I think I've got it everywhere. So yeah, check us out, drop us a line, and live a little bit wild.
Dan Vinson, everybody, doing the wild thing. Thanks for a great show. Thanks for listening, everybody. Thank you for listening to the show. I love sharing the experience with you and greatly appreciate your support. Please email podcast@bradventures.com with feedback, suggestions, and questions for the Q&A shows. Subscribe to our email list at bradkearns.com for a weekly blast about the published episodes and a wonderful bi-monthly newsletter edition with informative articles and practical tips for all aspects of healthy living. You can also download several awesome free ebooks when you subscribe to the email list. And if you could go to the trouble to leave a 5 or 5-star review with Apple Podcasts or wherever else you listen to the shows, that would be super incredibly awesome. It helps raise the profile of the B.rad podcast and attract new listeners. And did you know that you can share a show with a friend or loved one by just hitting a few buttons in your player and firing off a text message? My awesome podcast player called Overcast allows you to actually record a soundbite excerpt from the episode you're listening to and fire it off with a quick text message. Thank you so much for spreading the word. And remember, be rad.